Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the City Commission workshop for Monday, August 22nd, 2022 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bradford? Here. Commissioner King? Here. Commissioner McCool? Here. Commissioner Ramos?
Present.
Commissioner Sosa?
Here.
Vice Mayor Avila Vasquez? Present. And Mayor Hersberg?
Here. May we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner King, would you like to lead us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this evening we have one item of business on our agenda. That is a discussion, because it's a workshop, of the proposed rental ordinance creating a new Chapter 36 City Code of Ordinances to regulate rental dwellings within the city. Mr. Paradise?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron Paradise, Community Services for the record. I'm going to turn the floor over for introductory purposes to John Peters. I think he has a few words to speak before we get into the nuts and bolts of this discussion. Mr. Peters? Okay, very good. All right. I've got a PowerPoint presentation here. This is the Deltona Rental Registry program, and it's a proposal to add Chapter 36 to the City Code of Ordinances. Maybe resurrect Chapter 36 would be a better way of putting it. And I'll explain kind of the history here of, other attempts that the city has initiated to manage rental properties within the city, starting in 2007 with the passage of Ordinance 11-2007, which involved updating Chapter 22 to require rental properties obtain a business tax receipt. There was also a provision for emergency inspections as part of that program, and there was a requirement for a local contact to be identified. Ordinance 11-2007, logistically, has not been repealed. There's another attempt in 2014. Ordinance 11-2014 created new Chapter 36 to regulate residential rentals. There was a license required again. There was inspections as part of the process, and again, a requirement for a local contact to be identified. As part of Ordinance 11-2014, the city approved Resolution number 2014-31, which established registration fees to implement Ordinance 11-2014. Just for comparison purposes, the fee schedule under the resolution was $50 per single-family unit and $50 per multifamily complex or building, plus $10 per unit. Not too long after the passage of 11-2014, Ordinance 28-2014 was passed that basically repealed the original Ordinance 11-2014. Again, from a housekeeping standpoint, Resolution number 2014-31 was never officially repealed. Okay, the 2022 Deltona Rental Registry. The purpose and intent is to ensure safe living conditions within the city, improve general housing stock and condition within the city, establish an accurate database of rental properties within the city, ensure local contacts are available to address matters, including potential emergencies, and to be proactive with code compliance by intending to address matters before a violation or notice of violation is necessary. Some highlights. Absentee owners are required to register annually each dwelling unit. There is a fee. We'll talk about the fees here in a few minutes. If an absentee owner does not live within a 30-mile radius or less from the property, a local contact/manager must be hired or identified. Every 4 years, Each absentee owner must provide a city with an independent inspection from a Florida licensed home inspection for each dwelling unit. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more detail of what is associated with those inspections. The inspection parameters include functional, safety, code appropriate structural, roofing, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, septic, and means of egress. Attached to your agenda package is an inspection list that we've worked on in conjunction with the building department. Let's talk about exemptions. The exemptions to this program will be, limited. Apartment complexes containing 10 or more units that have an on-site management presence, and that on-site manager has an active or will attain an active business tax receipt from the city. The rationale for that is that the expectation is this on-site manager will work diligently to ensure this property will be maintained in a satisfactory and safe condition. Another exemption is a bona fide second home as authenticated by city or county utility usage. And the third exemption is dependent family members. Dependent family members is defined as, from the tax code purposes, is somebody that the owner would financially support, like a child or a parent. Again, the financial support. Let's talk about implementation. There's a yearly registration per unit amount of $250. According to the information we have, there are approximately 5,491 rental units within the city of Deltona. About 5,500, just kind of round up. As a footnote, the 5-year budget has also included this $250 per unit amount as part of the budget. The inspection includes a septic tank and would be completed every 4 years. The city is split into 4 geographic sections. There's a map that is included in your agenda package that shows those 4 sections, and is basically to ensure that there will be appropriate implementation and program maintenance. And there's an inspection review fee of $50. Administration, there's an inspection list. We talked about that. There's a fee schedule update that have the $250 initial registration fee and then the $50 fee for inspection review. There's going to be a significant amount of record keeping and archiving that's going to be associated with building this database. Most of the inspection reviews are going to be, mostly desktop done by city staff. And, there will be compliance because not everybody's going to want to sign on to this program if it is enacted by the city. And we've also outreached to a consultant to help us in the implementation. Let's talk a little bit about that consultant. It's a real estate and database-oriented consultant known as Net Assets. They are able to assist in record keeping, notification, and registration. That's a lot of administration that's associated with, record keeping, notification, and registration. They can create basically a quick reference dashboard type of spreadsheet so rental properties can be easily reviewed and otherwise analyzed as deemed appropriate. And the costs for this service are pretty manageable. What they're quoting now, which may expand as this program or this ordinance could evolve, is $10 per registration per property and $1 per unit. Single-family dwelling unit would be $11. And that would be part of the $250 fee With that being said, there is the draft ordinance that is attached to your all's agenda package. We realize there may be a few rough edges there, and we, are certainly willing to sand those off. I've got Marcia here, who's done a lot of heavy lifting on this. I have Richard Lovett here, who's also done a significant amount of work on this project to help field any questions that you all may have with regard to this initiative.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to talk about the timeline.
Yes. If it's the will of the commission, we can fast track this ordinance so that it would appear on the September 19th meeting and then advance to second and final hearing in October.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron, a couple of questions I had. Do you know about how much we spent in 2021 on abatements for properties? And is it split up into like rentals or move-outs, anything like that? Do we have a cost associated with that?
Yes, we do have a cost for move-out piles, and there was some information that was sent out that went back to, I want to say, October of last year. And I do not remember what that total cost was, and I do not remember how much we've spent on abatements, but it's a pretty significant number.
Mr. Peters, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to jump in.
Sure.
If you recall, at the last meeting, we added $25,000 to the previous $25,000.
Yep.
So the answer to your question is somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. The other thing I wanted to point out, Mr. Paradise did a very good Reader's Digest overview, but I want to go back to what the origin of this is. As you all recall, we had a lengthy discussion about the fact that we have been able to determine that about most rental properties in the city result in about twice as many code compliance cases, about twice as many crime-related issues, and about 2.5 times the drug issues. So there's definitely a nexus that the rental properties are causing impact on city operations. The second thing, and Ms. McCool, this is dear to your heart, we have had several cases of renters whose homes are in deplorable conditions. And really right now, we do not have the authority to go into those houses without the owner's approval. This ordinance addresses that. There is a valid complaint and there's concern about the safety of the environment. We have the authority to go into the property and do an inspection at any time, not wait 4 years. So that's an element that's in here that I don't believe Ron really covered, but that's a key element that's in here because this is about the quality of the housing stock and the safety for the people that live in these houses. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess what I noticed too, this equates to about $20 a month per unit. When you take the $250, you divide it by 52 weeks, right? That's where we're at. There's an extra $20 per month for rent. And another thing that we can't address in here, but that needs to be addressed when we talk about being out money, right, as our taxpayers, is also water deposits, right, or water bills where we're left hanging with water bills from rentals. And I know that we had started, I don't know where we're at with it, that's, you know what I mean, for y'all to finish, but to take into consideration, yeah, there are gonna be some pushback from this. However, you are correct. I've been in some less than ideal conditions with homes and residents that they rent these because there's not a choice to do it, and this is about public protection right here. Another question here is, we have started cross-referencing the homesteaded properties with the water bills to make sure that, because I understand when we talked about this before, it seemed like the numbers of rentals in Deltona was higher than the 5,500 presented here.
Yeah, the first database that we looked at was simply a distinction between homesteaded and non-homesteaded properties. That's where we came up with about 10,000 non-homesteaded properties. When we looked at it closer, we cross-referenced the utilities with the city's utilities. We also interfaced with the county and Deltona North, and they had it broken up, explicitly, this is a rental.
Right,
And that's where the 5,500 figure came up.
okay. And,
Ms. McCool?
yeah,
If I can put some numbers for you. One of the real issues that we have in Deltona Water is the way the state statutes are written. When a renter moves out and they don't pay the water bill, we cannot go against the property owner, and we have to write it off. Put it in perspective for you, and I'm sorry finance is not here, but I remember the number from about 2 years ago, that for a period of about 10 years, we had about $600,000
Yeah.
of unpaid bills that we have had. Many of those are renters. And so it definitely has an impact on Deltona Water. So I just want to give you that number.
yeah, and I mean, that was my concern. I know that it has nothing to do with the ordinance, but it goes to cause and effect, like how much we're having to recoup, right? How much taxpayers are having to recoup. So along with those things, I am, for the most part, happy with this, especially about being able to contact owners. There are some people that take a great amount of pride in their rentals. This is not meant to be punitive, and I think that it's written in a generous way. So thank you. That's all I have for
Could
right now.
I just wanted to comment, we do deal with the utility situation. In the ordinance, there's specific provisions in there for utilities, both Deltona Water and Del North. And, and that's one of the things that the property owner, when they go to rent, we're going to have to get sign-offs from whatever utility to make sure that the utilities are paid up. So that will make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's part of the implementation of this ordinance, is that if somebody has not registered, their tenant cannot come and open an account at that address.
Yeah, and I'm speaking, okay, because that's what I was speaking more to, recouping the money and, you know what I mean, being able to, for us to recoup that when it comes to that, because I understand, we've talked about this a lot of times, what money we were out, so I was unsure of how do we, recoup that from the owner standpoint.
Well, I mean, if they want to rent it again, then they have to, come in and deal with their bills from the previous person. They could, whoever the renter was, they could go up after that individual and try and recover. But the whole idea here is to make the city whole. And that's why we specifically, this was a very difficult ordinance to write because we couldn't copy anybody else's. We had to customize it for us. And so we specifically put those provisions in with regards to water and sewer and septic, and call out Del North and call out Deltona Water as an attempt to make sure that, we're covering all the bases. So.
Okay, it was unclear to me what the utility account meant. I thought that it meant something else, so thank you for clarifying that. Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Bradford?
Yeah, I'm happy to see this. As you know, I have been proponent for this, but there's a couple things that do concern me. One, it's not $20 a month, it's about $83 a month, because you have an annual inspection on a landlord of $250, a $50 inspection review, probably $350 for their septic inspection and what needs to be done there, and then another $350 for a home inspection. So this adds up real quick, and it's not just that. Not everybody is a slumlord. And I get we need to do something, and we need to have track of it. We need to have all the renters on board, who's a rental house, who's not, because the last thing you want is a violation put on a door of a tenant that just takes and throws it away, and you as a homeowner don't even know it until it's too late. So I do agree we need this. We're talking $50,000 in abatements last year. Let's talk high. So if I take the $300 inspection fee times 5,491 rentals, that's a revenue stream of $1,647,000. Are we here to make money, or are we here to control blight? Are we here to, as it said, which I don't agree, that all rentals bring code enforcement crimes and drugs? There's a lot of rentals here, and I don't think every one of them bring that, so I want us to be cautious on how we say that. There are a lot of bad ones. I've walked through some houses that I wanted to turn around and walk right back out of, or I didn't even want to walk into because who knows what would be crawling on me when I walked out. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm disagreeing with $250 plus another $50. We need to make $1.6 million in revenue on this. So is it a revenue stream, or is it a means to control the code, the crime, the drugs, the blight? Okay, I'm just saying I think the fee's a little excessive. We're looking at paying $10 a home, $11. We're looking at paying $60,000 to a consultant. My question is, that's annually? And then once that's established, why would I continue to need to pay a consultant if we already have the database and everything established and done? So is that a recurring $60,000 or whatever it is a year?
It would be, yes.
And to me, that just doesn't seem necessary to have a recurring consultant fee. Also, we have in there that they have to have a licensed home inspection. According to Chapter 48, 468 Florida statute, also a certified residential contractor and a certified general contractor are also able to do home inspections. They're not calling themselves home inspectors, but they are actually can and able to do home inspections. Right now, if you call for a home inspection by a home inspector, you're going to be put out possibly at 6 to 8 weeks. You know, I understand we can say, hey, Joe Blow, go take the class and do this. But, you know, if we already have GCs and residential inspectors able to perform it, that might be something that we want to add. And then additional staff. What additional staff are we going to need to hire to, you know, I mean, obviously the consultant's just going to help make it, but what do we have to have on staff to maintain this database, and what's that cost going to be?
Right now, we figure that it'll probably be, you know, at least 2 staff members needed to manage this.
What are we talking annually in benefits?
Probably about $300,000 a year, roughly.
Okay, so we got $300,000 a year for that, $60,000 a year, let's say, and that's assuming that's the first year. So roughly, we're just over $400,000. So again, it goes back to my question, why do we need to charge $300 a year and make $1.6 million? So I don't see where we need to have the fee that high. Having the fee this high, I think, is a little bit much. I would rather see something that's more in line with what we need to get, you know, this under control. So that's just my 2 cents. And as far as utilities, when a landlord owns a home and a tenant moves out, the city has been, and I know the county sometimes does it as well, if a tenant moves out and they owe money, they're not going to let them hook back up if they know that's a landlord-rented house until that landlord or that tenant pays that remaining balance. You know, so that's up to us on how we do it, but I'm just going to keep going back to the fees that we're charging, I think, are a little excessive. Much needed, but this is just a little excessive fee.
Oh.
Although, let me refer one more thing, sorry. For out-of-state, I understand us having to have that fee because there's probably a little bit more management involved, but when we have our local homeowners, I think it's a little excessive.
All set? Vice Mayor, and then Commissioner McCool.
Thank you, Mayor. Going back to what Commissioner Bradford said, I was thinking that this fee would be a one-time fee. as long as that landlord, owns that home. I can see that charging that, but an annual fee of that dollar amount, I think is a little too high. Just because I own a second home doesn't mean that I can afford all these fees. So I think an annual fee, a one-time fee for the landlord, I think makes more sense. And I had the question about the water bill because I also heard at one time that if I move into a home that has a water bill that's owned, in order for me to turn the water bill on, I have to pay that bill as the new renter. So I just want to make sure that that's not true.
Madam Vice Mayor, if I can address this, I respectfully disagree with my staff. Having worked in Deltona Water, I know that I have had to write letters to title companies because people closings were being held up due to an unpaid water bill. There is a state statute, I cannot remember the number now, that basically says that a city cannot place a lien on a property due to a debt created by a renter. So therefore, when a renter leaves the property, we are unable to attach that water bill to the owner. Now, we have been working on a new policy for Deltona Water, and one of the things that we would require when a new renter comes in, that the landlord has to sign on the new account that when the renter moves out, the bill will automatically go over to their landlord. Because what we have found is the renter leaves, they don't pay the bill, the landlord comes in on an open meter that's in somebody else's name, cleans the house, pressure washes, and that part of the water never gets paid either. And so we, in the new policy, which will be coming to commission here in the next 60 days, it had language in there that covers, when a renter signs up, the landlord has to sign that the bill would automatically go over to them when the renter moves out. That would cut some of the losses that we have found, but state statute, and the only way that we could avoid that is to basically say that renters can't open up an account, which really opens up Pandora's box. So, the reality is we will lose money on water accounts with rentals.
So the new renter is not going to be forced to pick up that bill in order to move in?
The new renter nor the property owner can be held responsible for the debt of a previous renter according to state statute. I will get that state statute reference before we bring the ordinance forward.
So if I move in, my water will be turned on, even though there's a water bill that is pending?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could we clarify here, because according to what I'm reading on the Schedule B fees, an owner will be charged $250 a year for each rental unit, okay? And then it states inspection reviews, $50, and subsequent inspections required will be $50. An inspection review is done every 4 years, correct?
That is
So that
correct.
is not per year. That is every 4 years, the $50. And the reinspection fee, right? And that's only contingent based on the inspection not
fails,
going
yeah.
well.
Yes,
Right,
ma'am.
so that's a non sequitur right there if the code is followed. So really what we have reoccurring is the $250 fee annually, correct?
The registration fee, you're correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, I would like that clarified.
Yes, annually, it's $250.
Plus what?
Nothing, just for the...
Exactly.
But every 4 years, there's a $50 fee.
I see that, right. And the non-compliance is $50 also. The operative
200
word being non-compliance, correct?
$250 plus $50 a day for noncompliance.
Right, okay, so that does not apply to you if you are following code. The only thing that is applying to you on a continual basis is the $250. Is that correct? Yes. Perfect, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner McClure, because that was my question, because I think I heard you need to say, it's not a yearly thing, the inspection. It's every 4 years, unless there's someone who makes a complaint in reference to that property. So I just want, thank you for that, because I think that needs to be clarified. An inspection is not every year, it's every 4 years.
Commissioner Bradford?
Okay, so it goes back to the same point, whether they do that annually or not. So take 250,000 times 5,491. Huh? $250. It still comes up to $1.372 million. For what we're seeing is going to cost staff-wise and everything $400,000 a year. So my question is, why do we need to charge $250 a year?
The intent is to also help the city offset the impacts of these non-homesteaded/rental units that have unduly burdened the city's emergency response and the city's code compliance apparatuses.
And how much is that? Because we just said that the blight was about 50,000.
That was for only the trash pickup, which is a
Right.
big part of it. There's also other abatements that occur as a result of that, and I do not have that figure at my fingertips.
Commissioner Bradford.
So I'm just trying to figure out why we're charging every landlord for the percentage of homes that are a problem.
Let me try this one. We keep talking about the impact that rental properties in general, and, let me emphasize here, we have some really good landlords, and then we have some really crappy landlords. And unfortunately, sometimes in industry, the good have to pay for the sins of the bad. That's a reality. But in the last year, Ron, about how many properties have we abated in the last year?
Do you have a handle on that, Richard?
If we're talking solid waste abatements, we're probably about a couple hundred.
Okay, and we just really started. As we keep going through this, we're going to be abating more and more homes. And while, the abatement, there is a cost to abate the house. That may be tearing it down. It may be, taking out 4 roll-offs with the trash out of the backyard or whatever. Most of those have been rentals, or a substantial number. What we never recruit is the staff time that we take in dealing with those. And what we never recruit when we do code violations and go to special magistrate and all this on rental property, it's our time and effort. One of the places that we really never recruit our time is when we go by a rental property and there are 4 or 5 cars parked out in the front yard. Those are things that we never recruit. And so the $250, we kind of took a look at, what our cost is with regard to code compliance, what our cost is regarding the fire department on the drug overdose calls, and what our time is for the sheriff's department to respond to, Ms. Vasquez, you know what I'm talking about here, a loud noise complaint. We're eventually going to have to start sending a code officer out after hours on overtime with a noise meter to get somebody that's causing problems with noise. There's a cost to all this stuff. And, $250 we believe is on the low side of what our staff time is in dealing with these. We purposely stayed on the low side. I think we could have justified $500, but, it's much like the $50 fee for the inspection. Ron, I believe your first draft, it was like $100 for the review and $250 when there was a problem.
150 and 500.
Okay. So you can see I brought that down a lot. But I thought you all would view 150 and 250 as being excessive. I think 50 will cover our costs. So we're trying to keep that number at a reasonable level. Everything we've done, if we try to do it in a way that keeps the cost down, the reason we're doing private home inspection services is I do not want the impression that Big Brother is watching over you. You know, I don't want people to think that government is going into your property, trying to create issues. By having a private licensed home inspector, we have a hands-off when it comes to the actual inspections. So we have tried to do this ordinance in a way that was the least obtrusive, the least appearance of government overreach, and keeping the costs at a reasonable level as compared to what we could probably justify.
Does that $250 and $50 include the BTR fee? Or is that going to be another fee on top of that?
That would include the BTR fee.
No, there is no BTR.
there is no BTR fee.
There is no BTR.
So
But
there's
they
not,
would-
Only for over 10 units.
Only 10 units or
only 10
more.
units they have to
Thank you.
have.
Yeah, so they don't
You are
have to.
correct.
So if they have 10 rentals, or is that multifamily?
That's multi.
multifamily.
That's
So
a
that would
multi.
be your apartment complexes and that?
Yes.
So regular Joe Blow rental homeowner,
No
they would
BTR,
have no
yeah.
BTR, just the $300
Yeah.
a year, and then
No,
every,
it's 250.
And then an inspection review.
In their fourth year, whenever they hit, then
then
it's
every fourth
50.
year, it's the inspection review for the home inspection, the septic, and the home
Yeah.
inspection review.
Yeah, so once every 4 years, and that, one of the reasons when, this was again, I said, quite a task. The reason we separated the city into quadrants is so only 1/4 of these units would be inspected every year, which would minimize staff and, you know, and create more costs and have to hire more people. So when you look at the whole city, only 1/4 of those rentals are going to be inspected each year. That makes it more manageable to try and handle, you know, within a reasonable budget.
Thank you.
And let me also say this, in the ordinance, it says any apartment 10 units or larger with management. We're not going to kid you here. The industry standard is 80 to 100 units in order to have on-site management to be cost effective. So between 10 and 80 to 100, they're probably going to be doing these inspections because they cannot afford to be providing on-site management unless they get to a certain threshold. So even though the ordinance said 10, the reality is it's going to be more like 80 to 100 and above.
Commissioner Sosa?
Okay, just for clarification, we have 250 a year, 50 every 4 years. Then the rental owner is responsible for getting a inspection on his septic tank as well as a home inspection, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that leads me back to where Commissioner Bradford was. It's not 20 a week. My calculations are about 35 a week. By the time you add $1,000 for the 4 years, $50 for the inspection, $350 for an inspection of your septic tank and a drain, and $250 for a home inspection. So you're probably somewhere around $1,650 divided by 48. You're about $35 more per month. And as a landlord, when you inconvenience me and take away from my time, I have to add money to that too. So I will probably add $15 a month. So you're probably up to about $50 a month to cover the cost of this. So to your point, Commissioner Bradford, I completely got where your numbers came from, because I had the same thing here. We got additional staff cost. We're paying an outside company to manage it. You said, from the last meeting, when I questioned the abatement amount of the $50,000, how much we recouped, you said, well, not a lot of it, but it had nothing to do with rental properties. You told me the money unable to be recouped was because somebody was taking a bunch of cement blocks and dumping them off in the woods and alleys, and that's what was costing us the money. Not that we weren't recovering these monies from rentals or houses. So I think that's a little misleading there. Now, my question is, by raising the rent $50 a month on these houses, how much crime is that going to reduce? I'm just curious. What will $50 more a month do to reduce crime? What will it do to reduce drug overdoses? I mean, we threw that out there, but I don't understand the correlation of where it's going to come down. And to use the words up here that have been used a couple times, how many houses in Deltona out of the 5,500 have been in deplorable shape?
We really can't answer that question because we never had the information.
Okay, so I know there's a few, but do we know if those are rentals or if they're homesteaded? I don't know. And to say rental properties, do they pay ad valorem taxes to the city?
Yes, sir.
And they probably pay more than homesteaded property, correct?
That is correct.
So they are paying for emergency services too, correct?
They do pay for emergency services.
All right, that's it, thanks.
Commissioner McCool, and then I'm going to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Paradise, do we have any idea if we have a majority of corporate ownership in rentals or private rentals? Meaning, do we have, people that own 2 to 3 properties, or do we have more corporations that own 10 and above? Or do you have any data on that?
No.
Okay. So
That's where the database comes in, creating it. Then you'll see by address properties and all the information about it, who the owner is, where do they live, do they have a registered agent, do they have a realty firm representing them, and also contact information also. But until you get to that level of detail, we don't have any of that.
Well, I'd be interested in capturing the data that people who are homesteading have evaded by renting out the property and having that revenue instead of living in the homes. There are 2 in my neighborhood that I know for sure of. So that would be interesting data to capture also.
It will catch a number of properties that are showing homesteaded that are not.
Yeah, exactly. So to that point also, I just want to say that, why, the question is why must a couple pay for the sins of others? And I don't think that it's so much for the sin, but I think that the distribution has the same to do with, why do I pay taxes for schools when I don't have any children in school? Why do I pay for parks when I don't have any children that goes to the parks? I mean, I do. Why do I pay for code compliance when my house is in order? We could ask those all day long. The thing is that we've lost money due to this, due to the loss of revenue stream from not capturing that, the homesteaded tax. We've lost revenue in the past due to us having to abate property without recourse. We've lost money in the past as a city due to people running out on water bills. So what we have lost here, I am about being revenue neutral also. It meant to be punitive. But when we talk about in terms of what are we losing or gaining, what we have lost, I'm sure that evens out in the end. So I'm okay with this. If the rent goes up, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. If the rent goes up, the cost may come down long term if we have these things in place that are going to get our city in order. It's not meant to be punitive, but we do need to right the ship here, because it's not fair that I've lost property value or could lose property value. It's not fair that I have to go pick up trash. It's not fair the stuff that I've walked into and seen how tenants have lived in squalor. It's not fair to them. We have to look out for that also. So there's consequence, and there's a thing of the universal principle of balance at work here at $250 a year. So you are saying that when we get this, the data will be captured, right? Now, may I ask you this? If after capturing data for 1 year, okay, 1 year is a good, wouldn't you say, data capture, right? 1 year to capture data, to assess where we're at the time. Is there a way to amend the ordinance if we see that we need to adjust? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, and also because we're showing the fees that in the ordinance it says it can only be changed by resolution of the commission, it also allows you, based on the data that you collect, to adjust fees in the future. The BTR is always problematic because the way it's set up, you have to go through a more complicated process to change the BTR amounts, but this way we just do a resolution, change the exhibit, and you can go up or down depending on what you learn from it. And of course, to me, this is the kind of data that you can pull up on your phone or whatever, or be on the website. You know, it's, again, we're gathering information, we're trying to find out what we're really dealing with, and the way when we worked on this ordinance, I mean, I'm not talking about the fees, I'm talking about how the ordinance was structured. We were trying to look at how do we, you know, help neighbors, how do we preserve the housing stock in the city, how do we keep everybody in a place of upkeeping, which will raise everyone's values.
Exactly.
You know, and so that's how that was the focus of how it was written, to try and deal with those kinds of issues and what could happen and how do we deal, you know, with people that, you know, and that's why dependent was a big issue, because we're using the IRS definition, so we don't get a situation where somebody's got a third cousin that's living in the house that, you know, they're trying to use as an exemption or something like that. I mean, we were trying to look at all the possibles that could come at us and how could we try and make the, you know, get the kind of coverage that, you know, basically what we were looking for that would be good for the city.
Yeah,
So,
and that was my point in the fact that, you know, looking at it from a different side of the coin, instead of it being a $250 fee, it's a $250 investment. And I think that after capturing that data, we will see what that ROI is, you know what I mean, and be able to adjust. So it's not meant to be punitive. It's a good start, I believe. And I believe that we can, reinvest into our community. So it's a win for me. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor, I'm going to say a few words, and then I'll go to you while we wrap this up. Ron, why do we need a consultant for the $60,000 every year? What's the consultant's job?
The consultant does is manage the database so that it can be analyzed. They create the dashboard, and they will help us with notice and so forth as well.
Okay.
so you might add, they also can take over liens. We have a lot of lien work that goes on, and it takes up a lot of staff time. So we're looking to also try and shift the cost of all those lien questions, so the city's not bearing the cost of them. I get involved in lien questions. So they have a system, you know, and it's, what did they try? It was really, what was it, Richard? $10 to research a lien. We can't do it for $10. So, you know, some of that now, after the database is in place and just needs to be there and upkeep, I don't know if it would cost that much, Ron. I don't know if we asked that question.
Yeah, again, I think that probably the biggest benefit is in the reoccurring notice that would be part of this process, which, you know, that can be a lot of administrative work.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go down the list of some of the things that were talked about here today. First of all, the big question, why do we need this ordinance? Why? as long as I've been sitting in one of these chairs up here and we've done community outreach, every single time the first thing everybody says is we want to clean up the city. From 2010, 2011, 2012, 2015, every time we do that, let's clean up the city. This is what the residents have said. And instead of cleaning it up, we've gone downhill. We cut code enforcement years ago, and now we have, after the downturn, we have an exorbitant amount of rentals, much more so than we used to, number one. How do you control what goes on in the rentals? When I drive around and I get a complaint from a resident or I see something, I go on the property appraiser and I look up, is this a homeowner or is this a rental? 90% of the time it's a rental. That's problematic. 90% of the time. Those are the move-outs, those are the excessive vehicles that are parked everywhere, those are fences being put up without permits, those are a shed put up with pieces of fence in the backyard, all on rental properties that I can't imagine we would approve because it's right on the property line, which we don't allow. So why do we need it? Because if you, as a city, don't have some sort of standard for people to follow, they won't follow it. Human nature is to follow the minimum standard, especially when it's a business. And let's be clear, rental properties are a business. They are not somebody renting out the house next door to their son or their daughter. You may have a few like that, but they are a business. And let's talk about out-of-state property owners versus local. I looked that up too. We got a lot of people that live in DeBary, in DeLand, in Sanford, in other areas, in Ormond, in Daytona, that have rental properties here, and they're just as bad as the big companies. They're just as bad. There's no difference from someone that lives in DeBary and has a house that goes downhill as some company that's out in Vegas. So let's talk about abatement costs. How long does it take us to recoup the abatement cost, Ron?
Typically, no less than, 3 months?
We have some outstanding from years.
Well, yeah, some of them, they go away. Some of these liens go away after 20 years, but we can't really file or do anything until 3 months.
So when we do all these abatements, we have to pay up front, just like when we have to cut somebody's lawn because the grass is too high and the house is abandoned. We pay all that up front, and then we try to get our money back.
That's correct.
Okay, that's number one. Property appraiser, $1,500 minimum cumulative to get the money back on the tax bill, right?
That is correct for the non-ad valorem tax assessment.
For non-ad valorem tax assessment, where we have to do something. It doesn't count if you have parking fines or if you have a fence permit fine. It has to be the city has to do something. The city has to mow the lawn, the city has to pick up the garbage, seal up a swimming pool, and so on and so forth. Then we can put it on the tax bill to get it recouped. It has to be $1,500 cumulative. You can accumulate it, but if you do this for a rental house every year, once or twice a year, it's going to take how long to accumulate $1,500 if each abatement's $125 or $200 or whatever it is. So the next comment I have is the price. $250 is too much, this and that. Did we research what other cities say?
There aren't a lot of other cities that have similar types of programs. Is that correct, Marcia?
For the size of the city, we have an inordinate amount of rental property.
We do.
And in Florida, the big issue is, and I don't want to bring this up, but short-term rentals in most cities are the issues, and they're treated totally different. And the state's involved in that and collecting money and everything else. So when you get to what I looked at 2 or 3 before I started writing this, and none of them really matched us. So most of this is new language based on trying to adapt some of the things that I saw. I think we saw one at 250, and I think one at 200, and something.
Well, let me just tell you,
Okay.
when I researched this, I know some people that work in this field throughout the state. The city of Ponce Inlet, very small city, relatively high tax base. They charge $500 a year. They just went up from $400. They charge an inspection an additional $100 every year for an inspection. And if it's a short-term rental, there's a $50 fire fee on top of that. because they want to get a hold on their rentals. Now, that's an outlier, but I'm just saying that is what they're charging. So when you look at just making sure I have here. Okay, let's go back to the fines and the cumulative fines for abatements and everything, like we had them come here. 15 years we've been putting up with this stuff. And what does the commission do? Reduce the fines. Reduce the fines again and again and again and again and again. As long as I've been sitting up here, we've been reducing fines. I understand if it's a one-off, if it's an outlier, if something happened, there are circumstances. But when you have these cumulative problems over and over and over with the same properties, and then we reduce the fines, what are you doing? You're rewarding negative behavior, and everybody else in the city has to pay for it. So, last thing I want to say is the question was asked in terms of investors in this city. So if you look at the top 10 property tax payers in this city, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are large rental corporations. Okay, they're on par here with Duke Energy, Florida Power, Walmart, Lowe's, Racetracks, Publix, Bright House, blah, 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 blah. You can see it in the back of your caper, your financial thing. It's all listed, who paid what 10 years ago compared to now. So when you look at that, it's a business, only they don't employ people. Racetrack employs people. Duke Energy employs people. Rental homes are a business that provide a service, they provide a place to live, and what they're going to charge for the rent is what the market is going to hold. We've seen that all over here. They might be a little less, a little up, a little down here and there, but they're going to charge what the market can hold. It's the bottom line. And the last comment I have, let's talk about the cost. $1,372,000, is that what you calculated? Something like that? Was it, Commissioner Bradford? And then about $400,000 in cost to the city. So you got $1 million out there floating. So we just passed a preliminary millage rate. Got my temporary bill in the mail today. See what it's going to show me, whatever. So part of the budgetary process also included looking at this income through 2 years down the road. 2 years, sir?
That is correct, ma'am. We took a conservative approach as to how long it would take to implement. We put it 2 years out. It's conceivable if we do it in October, it would start in October of
So
23.
$1 million a year in income, give or take, and we got a sheriff's contract that's going up $3 million. So everybody always says all the time, we should run the city like a business. You can't run the city like a business all the time because the city provides services for people that businesses don't. But there are certain things that you have to look at, and you have to look at your return on investment. And we have how many code officers right now, including supervisors, the whole shebang?
Right now, there are 14 code officers and 2 supervisors.
So I'm going to say that that's probably the most of any other city in Volusia County, right, Richard?
We're right in line with Palm Coast, which is the same size.
Palm Coast is in Flagler County, and I agree they're the same size, but we have the most code enforcement officers in Volusia County, by far. Correct, sir? And you got to ask yourself why, because we're a residential community, and we have a lot of code enforcement violations. So finally, we have an ordinance that is actually going to have some teeth and hold the people accountable that are making money off the city. And what's it going to do when you hold the landlords accountable like you have been with code enforcement? It forces them to look at who they're renting to. And it forces them to go ahead and say, I'm going to get nailed every single time if I continue to rent to people that turn over and don't care and leave the house a mess every single time. If you rent to great people, you're not going to have any problems. But if you continue to rent for, I mean, I drove around Saturday or yesterday or whatever day it was again, and there's some things that are great and some things I just can't believe. And why should those people in some of those areas, especially our lower income areas and our old areas, have to be subjected to that? Why? That's all I can say. There has to be a way to clean up this city. So, no more speakers on here. Any public comments?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am. Hold on, Vice Mayor wants to speak, and then we'll go to public comment if there are any.
Thank you, Mayor. How do we handle this right now, Ron, when a renter's property is in violation? How do we handle it right now?
Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the underlying landowner to address the notice of violation if issued.
And so we go after them to pick up the expenses, or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could address a question that came from Commissioner Sosa. If you take the 4-year cost, including a $50 reinspection, I'm making it the worst it can be, it comes out to $30.20 a month. On a $1,800 rental, that's 1.68%. On a $2,200 rental, that is 1.37%. The $1,800 and $2,200 seems to be the norm now. I would also remind the commission that many of these rental properties became rentals during the downturn when property values were about half what they were in the late 2000s. So a lot of these rental properties have mortgages that are based on a $60,000, $70,000 value, yet they're renting them for 3-4 times what their mortgage is. So I don't think that 1.68 and 1.37% is a very large cost for this program.
Public comment, please.
Okay, Madam Mayor, there are 4 public comments: Albert Bryant, Richard Bellick, Tara D'Erico, and Manny Rodriguez. Albert Bryant, please.
Let's see here. I heard a lot of things out here tonight. A lot of people live in our city, and, what really keeps ringing a bell in my head is the fact that y'all have actually okayed a whole bunch of new houses. But where are those houses? What are those houses called? Oh, that's right, they're going to be in HOAs. So people choose to move into a house knowing that they're going to pay $1,800 a year. That doesn't have anything to do with their house, just so they can have a nice green yard. And we're talking about adding, what'd you say, $30 a month? Okay. So someone chooses to live in an HOA that is paying an extra $1,800 a year, just so the guy next to him can guarantee he's going to have a green yard instead of native floral that doesn't take and use all our water. But we're complaining about adding $30 to help pay for the sheriffs, help pay for the fire department, keep our streets a little cleaner, maybe. Because I can honestly tell you, I have at least 5 renters out of the 5 brand new houses on my street. And oh, that's right, there's 2 semis that now park on my street regularly. But you won't see me complain about it because, that's not what I do. I'm more honorable than that. I behave a little better than that. I have a little bit better virtue than that, rather than to be snarkle or otherwise. So now let's see here. We're talking about money. Don't.
Thank you. Richard Bellick, please.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Ms. Skiffalo. How are you? Heidi Erzberg. I opened your eyes Sunday, didn't I? I showed you a real slop joint in Deltona. Now, I want to tell you, I'm not here to make friends with any of you. I told Mrs. Bradford about a crack house about a year and a half ago. Nothing ever happened. Well, I can't say thank God the guy overdied and left, but at least the place got cleaned up, and that's what happened. Now, you seen, Heidi, what I showed you. You seen it. I complained to him. I was told under investigation. We went on and on and on. I mean, so I might as well just complain to, is there a janitor here or somebody? Al, can you hear me? Oh, thank you, buddy. I mean, come on, Heidi, you know the story. Now you've seen it. I don't want to put nobody on the spot. Mr. Sosa seen it. You're my witness, Heidi. I mean, come on, Dana McCool, we need your help here. You'll speak up. You're not shy. Get in there. I mean, you're not washed up like some of these other guys up here. Get in there. Clean the city up, then worry about the money. Get the places clean. What do you do for your residents? You ask this guy a bunch of questions. He looked over at him. He changed his answer. He went to Marcia. She changed his answer. Why give answers? Why are you answering questions for when you don't know? Just say, I don't know. I'll check it out. I'll do something. I'm not here to be bored or for a horse and pony show. I work. I clean my yard. I try and keep our bills are paid. We get nothing from the city, and we don't ask for nothing. But Jesus, when you come and complain and you can't you're talking about more code enforcement officers. I couldn't get one in 6 months up there, Heidi. Come on. Not one. I hope you hear me, Ruben Colon. I love you, brother. But anyway, this is the way it is. You got to get strict policies, and you got to check up on these people. I see 3 or 4 code enforcement officers with trucks sitting there talking.
Thank you. Tara DiErico, please.
And it's a shame you ain't
Yes.
giving me more time because you know I'm 100% right.
2 minutes on a workshop.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Tara DiErico. So we definitely need a rental ordinance. I think that's something most people will agree on. We do need to hold landlords accountable to acceptable and safe living conditions. As far as the annual fee, and I heard a few people say, right, why should everyone have to pay for the sins of some or the few? But maybe one of the things that we can consider is there a compromise? So if you're a landlord that's in good standing and you're doing everything that the city wants and you're being a good steward of the city, can we slide that fee a little? You know, and on the flip side, if you're a landlord or a property owner that's not in good standing and you're not doing what you need to be doing, you have multiple violations, you should be held accountable with a higher fee. And then I did have a question, or just something to consider is when I was looking through the exceptions, so if you're a landlord in an HOA, which typically already have much of all these practices in place, are they still subject to that fee? Or would that be managed through their HOA? So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Manny Rodriguez, please.
Good evening, Manny Rodriguez. With all due respect, I think we do need an ordinance to control the rental property. I have a couple of houses in my street that I would like to see them move out and go elsewhere, and for them to sell their houses. And maybe local owners move in and upkeep it like I do mine. I don't do any work in my yard because I'm too damn old to do it, so I pay somebody to do it for me. I read through the ordinance, and there's a couple of things that perhaps, due to translation and English not being my first language, not understanding. But one of them is this issue of dependency, of dependence, based on the IRS definition. My parents, I have 2 houses here in Deltona. Let's say, this is for instance, I have 2 houses, and I want to move my parents in one of them. They are going to apply for water. The property's not going to be homesteaded, and I'm going to be the owner. They're going to have to provide some kind of a lease to live there. Now you're making me a landlord. They're not going to pay me anything, but they're not depending on me. And they're going to pay their own water bill. So that's something that I think that you have to be cautious of, because you're going to hurt some of the people. when it comes to family. So please, think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor, this closes public comment.
Thank you very much. Question, Mr. Peters, on this last question, is there a lease required to be shown when you take a water bill, proof of ownership or a lease?
Yes, ma'am, you have to provide an actual copy of the lease, and when we did our initial evaluation of our, the number of rental properties, as Ron alluded to earlier, that was going through every single water account and pulling those that had a lease. Now, that was a high number, but at the same token, we know that there are some rentals where the owner pays the utility bill. But, you know, that was the initial effort that we made. I believe, as you all recall, when we first talked about this, we had a map with red dots all over the city, and those were the dots that associated with the rentals. And we made a comment at that time, we did not have the Del North information, so don't believe that Del North is rental free. We just didn't have that information, and that's why we were able to determine that there were two major clusters of rentals in the city. And so, you know, one of the things we're going to look at, and I was joking with Ron, that if we do the ordinance, that we will probably have a lottery and a hat, where we will pick the first four. You know, we had the city in quadrants, you know, zone 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll pull a name out of a hat. So randomly, no one particular group is going to be selected. If be in the first year or the fourth year, it will be a luck of the draw in terms of what ones, so that we can avoid any controversy on that. The other thing, and a comment that was made, and something that we've been looking at, because we do get a lot of complaints about how long it takes to get through the process to get to compliance. What I'd like to do is to ask the code department to start doing a dashboard, much like you all get from Public Works, where the column will say initial notice, second notice, magistrate hearing, and all the steps, so that you can look up a piece of property. You know, it would be alphabetical and then numerical. You can look up a piece of property and see where they are in the process. That could be made public, so that your constituents, you know, if they know that Mr. Sochi, your neighbor's been a problem, you can look up their address and see that they're scheduled for the magistrate hearing next month. And you would know the status, because a lot of the phone calls we get, if people don't appreciate, you know, a project can be active, but if the property owner does not choose to become in compliance, it can be dragged out for quite a period of time. And even if the magistrate finds against them, they may have a running fine that's been going on for 3 months. And, you know, everybody, like Mr. Bellick would say, well, nothing's happened on this property for 4 months, well, yet they've been running a fine for the last 2.5 months. And I think that dashboard would be really valuable to show the public that, you know, the code compliance people are doing a good job. Unfortunately, to reach compliance, it's a two-way street. And a key part of that is the owner wanting to come into compliance. So that's something that we will work on. Richard's probably going to kill me tomorrow morning. But that will be an effort that we will make to put that dashboard out on a weekly basis. So thank you.
And if I could,
Can you hit your mic, Marcia?
I had it on, sorry. That was a real issue for me, writing on how we deal with dependency and how we stay out of a problem where we just have some relative that doesn't have a lease or anything that's staying in somebody, you know, some family, extended family owns a house. And so I went to the IRS definition, because at one time I thought I was going to be a tax lawyer, but then I decided I don't think I could stand it. But by the same token, we try and focus on dependency. As an example, if Mr. Rodriguez had another house and his parents lived there, if you could like claim them because of the value of the rent as a dependent, but that's not, you don't want to do it that way.
I'm not going to claim them as dependent. They're my parents. I want them to have a decent place to live. I want to live.
No, but
They have Social Security, they pay the water bill.
Yeah.
And now there's a discrepancy because they're going.
This is going off the chain.
Sorry, we'll work on it.
Okay, all right. Manager comments? City, no comments?
No comments.
Okay, we are adjourned. Remember to hit the gavel.